Hello, everybody. My name is Andre. I'm a game designer here at Notorious, and welcome to our first episode of Meet the Legacy Devs. The plan with these is to communicate and to engage with you guys, the players, let you know what's coming, what we're working on, and also answer a bunch of your questions. And each week we'll bring in some team members to talk about the feature topic, maybe show some work in progress stuff. Could be combat design, could be art, could be level design, anything's on the table. After that, we'll also be answering your questions. So we prepared for this one, we prepared the top 5 most asked questions on the last playtest. But if you have additional questions, just save them for the end and we'll invite you up on stage and you get to ask Chris and I your questions. You can also just ask them in chat. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a bunch of people from the team watching live. By the way, for the people on YouTube watching this, we're doing these every week. That's the plan. We're doing them on Discord. So yeah, hope to see you here next time. And I'll have a link to our Discord down in the video description. For the first episode, we have Chris Kaleki, our founder, CEO. And Chris, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. So founder, CEO here at Notorious, but also just heavily working on the design and the vision of Legacy. And previously, before working at Notorious and founding Notorious, I worked at Blizzard for many years, like 13 or so years, on World of Warcraft. And there I worked as a game designer on mainly classes and PvP balance and these sort of things. So really Legacy is like a culmination of a lot of the things that I learned in my career as a designer working at Blizzard, and then just a lot of my passions as well, which is PvP and classes and systems and crafting and all fantasy and all these things. So really excited to talk with you all today.
So Chris is gonna just kick it off and talk about the last playtest we had and kind of the lesson we learned and what we're gonna focus on working forward. So take it away.
Yeah, so for each show that we're going to do, we're going to talk a little bit there'll be a feature, and so we'll bring up someone from the team and talk about a little part of the game or something going on and some updates. So for this one's, since we decided for this first one, we decided to talk a little bit about the last playtest and some of your guys' feedback, what we're going to change, and then talk a little bit about what to expect in the future ones. So, I think the last feedback, and thank you, by the way, for everybody who filled out the survey. That's really helpful for us to understand like how things are going with the game, what you guys think is working, and what needs more attention. And one of the big things from the survey is just, and I don't have like the results, like the numbers up here necessarily, but generally each play test, the numbers are getting better in terms of your reception to the different parts of the game and the systems and how you're feeling about it. And so that's really great to see. Some of the feedback that we got that was more interesting was, the last one we kind of unveiled this new progression feature for the game, which is called the Lodge. The Lodge allows you to have these different furnishings or modules, if you want to call them, like the bed, which gives you a more rested experience, or the cooking pot, which lets you cook different meals using ingredients you find through adventures or purchasing from some of the other merchants. It was a little confusing, and that makes a lot of sense because it's just coming in. It's a new feature that we're unveiling, and there's quite nothing like it, I think, in some other, certainly not in the other games that are adjacent to ours, or even in a lot of other RPG games. But the idea is like it's sort of almost simulating player housing in some ways, and you're kind of outfitting it with different there's like little different progression systems within it, and so that makes perfect sense. And so this next playtest we're going to have is going to be further functionality improvements to the Lodge, fixing some bugs with it, and that sort of thing. So that makes a lot of sense. We've been doing these internal play tests for a long time now, for around only maybe like a year. A lot of it started out with like friends and family, so very, very small. And then we started inviting some folks like you guys to the play test, and this has been going on for a lot shorter time. But always like the number one thing the players had issue with has been different each playtest almost. But it used to be a lot of core functionality, like understanding what the vision of the game is supposed to be, or the combat, these sort of things. But now it's like the main thing has just become wanting to see more content and more things in the game. And so that's actually really great because it means that we're on the right track with the core of the game, and just really now we want to see more content. And so I think if our core problem with the game is like, hey, I'd like to see more things in it, that's actually a really good problem to have. So yeah, so that was like the number one issue that you guys cited, or not issue, but like request that you guys had in the survey. And then, one thing that we ask each time is, what do you feel like the most powerful classes? What do you think the most fun classes are? And these change. I think every class has been number one here at some point in time. The warrior is kind of the least here in both categories right now, but the warrior used to be you know, there used to be talk on a team of like, why would I play anything in this game other than the warrior? I guess I can't be a hunter or whatever. And so, yeah, the warrior is kind of the least in both categories this time. Although I would say, and I don't have the data up here, the difference, the delta between all the different classes is very small. And so, the difference between the warrior and the hunter is very. I don't have the data here. Maybe next time I'll have that. But the difference between them is pretty small, so that none of the classes, at least what you guys said in the survey, felt like they're super out of place. So with the hunter, I think she is pretty strong. She's ranged start, and so we're doing some tuning on her bows to kind of tone some of them down, because generally our philosophy and balance range versus melee is supposed to melee has higher damage and higher health, but then range, of course, has the ability to shoot from range, and so that's kind of generally how we're going to try to balancing melee versus range. But right now, I would say probably the hunter and the priest do a little bit too much damage, given that they're ranged and have so much strength in their kits right now. I'd probably put the priest actually as the most powerful right now, and we're doing some changes to Heaven's Fury, which is that AoE stun that she does, to make it a little bit have more counterplay and not as powerful. So these rankings make a lot of sense. I think in general we want to bring up the melee, the warrior and rogue a bit, and future melee classes if we have them, because that's really what the combat system helps showcase, is like that, what we call the combat triangle of like block, evade, and counterattacking, and power attacks and stuff like that. So yeah, so that was kind of the reception from the player feedback that you guys had. Anything else here, Andre, or you want to talk about?
Kind of mirror what you're saying about each class being at some point the strongest. And I posted a little image in the chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
so you can see they're very close. Obviously, we've been kind of, like Chris said, we've been kind of testing almost exclusively internally for the last year. So only recently we started like putting these classes in more competent hands, and we started realizing that people can do some crazy things that we never even thought about. So yeah, class balance is, I feel like it's in a pretty okay spot, but it's something we're constantly changing, like from playtest to playtest.
Yeah, and class balance is something that our team, especially me, has a lot of experience with. And one thing that I've learned in my career is just that it's never going to be perfectly balanced, and actually, you really don't want that. You kind of want it to feel a little like everybody is kind of overpowered, or everybody has like a real cool strength. Because something that I also notice in the playtest, people saying, well, warriors are just cracked, or priests are cracked, or whatever. And so the more of like we feel like each class has a lot of strengths, or feels really impactful, that's kind of the goal. And of course, that doesn't mean we want it to literally be chaos completely, but anyway, that's kind of philosophically there. I noticed someone in the chat is talking about the eagle, which is called Sentinel Strike, the hunter. If she has a lot of swiftness, which generates from when she does charge shots, she can cast Sentinel Strike instantly, which normally I think it has like almost like a 5-second cast time if you do it with no swiftness. And so it's really powerful, and that's kind of like the rotation or the sequence you're supposed to do. With the hunters, build up swiftness, and then you could use it using the eagle. Swiftness as well, I think it speeds up how much stamina regeneration you have.
It makes your shots just charge faster, so you're kind of...
Yeah, exactly. It gives you like haste, basically. One thing with that category of ability, the Sentinel, is there's a Sentinel Strike that we have, which most people do use. And I don't, I understand why it's pretty strong and fun to use. But there's also a Sentinel Cyclone. We really like that ability too, is with the Hunter, because you could jump into the Cyclone and you get launched up. And if you use Windfall, which is another trait, she's kind of slow falls downward and you kind of shoot while in the air, which could be really strong against melee that's fighting you, warriors, that sort of thing, or creatures. So you could do really like cool tricks with that. And then the third one we're going to unveil, maybe this playtest, maybe the next one after. We have to see like how it's going with this balance of it, or the how, if it has any bugs or whatever, which is you kind of summon the Sentinel as like a little pet. And it can kind of tank for you for a little bit, and has 3 hits, and has, players can kill the Sentinel and stuff like that. So anyway, we're gonna massage these other 2 Sentinel abilities so that there's choices and there's reasons to use each of them for different situations. So what of our priorities that we want to focus on internally as a team? Um, me looking at the game, I think a lot of times your guys' feedback, and it makes perfect sense, is always going to be on like bugs or tuning or balance and these sort of things, which is actually our number one priority. Was really try to polish the game, bug fix things. There's little things on each class, almost every ability, that isn't quite working as we intend, and more of that will improve. See a lot of next test as well. So that is our number one priority. The second next big priority is really to create a little more experience on the map. You've seen there's a few creature types. There's the ogre, there's the weighted armor, which is kind of the big kind of like a ghostly knight kind of guy that hangs around the castle areas. And then there's a red skeleton, which is kind of like a skeleton, but he's elite and he's hits a lot harder, has higher health. So you see these kind of peppered around the map a little bit, and so we really want to create a little more variety with. So we have those, and we have like these what we call normal mobs, which are just the rest of them. So we want to create a little more variety and have maybe a middle category, which is sort of elites, and then these sort of boss category, let's say. And so we're gonna like work a lot on that to try to create a little more progression in the map, so that there's like easy, medium, hard, and different areas in the map. That is a big focus, is adding more variety of creature encounters. Like PvE in this type of game is super important, maybe even more important than PvP. And so that's a big focus we're working on. And then the third is, and this is something in you guys' feedback as well, is to add like a tutorial map, so that it's easier for new players to onboard, to kind of figure out how to play the game and that sort of thing. And so here on the right, you kind of see this very, very early map of a future farm zone that we're working on. And then there's this Fatui area, which is the first time user experience, or like a little tutorial area that we're currently working on right now. And so we hope to have this in the game within the coming month or so, maybe next month, or very soon in the next couple months. And so our vision with this tutorial area also is supposed to be, it's not like go here, go here, go here, like very scripted. Instead, it's more of a sandbox kind of safe area you can kind of explore and just do it yourself, rather than being told, to go to A to B to C. And so, yeah, we're currently working on this right now. We're really excited about that. And we really think this will help bring more players to our game and be able to be a little easier. Whereas we noticed, like, for example, in the Next Fest, players just play for their first time in Greenwood and get ganked by a rogue. Maybe it's one of you, and they might not return because they're like, wow, this game is insane. So yeah, so these are our 3 internal kind of focuses that we're working on.
All right, time for some questions. So these are some questions that we got from our last survey. So these are the top 5 most asked questions. And let's start off with number 1. The most asked question was, when's the next playtest? So Chris, when's the next playtest?
So the next playtest is actually going to be quite soon. We kind of want to space the playtests further apart. We kind of noticed, and we got feedback from you, that they're too frequent, and we kind of wanted them to take a little bit more time, so there was more stuff in there. But actually, the next one is going to be pretty soon. It's going to be next week, next Wednesday. And so it's going to be again for another week, starting next Wednesday on December 4th. And we're going to announce this playtest during the OTK's Winter Expo. That's going to be streamed that day, I think starting noon Pacific. And we'll just launch basically the playtest right during that stream. And so hopefully we'll maybe get some more players who see a little trailer we're going to show and during the announcement on stream. And so yeah, it will be again 1 week long, and so it'll go from I think the 4th to I forget what that is, the 13th or something. Next week, the day before, when the playtest goes up, we're going to do another one of these shows. So we're going to change it actually from Wednesday to Tuesday, and we'll update the invite in Discord as well. And we'll go a little bit over like what you can expect in the playtest and what some of the new things are. So anyway, next Wednesday, that's when it's going to be.
Next question is, will you keep the classes gender locked?
Yeah, so there's a lot of questions on customization and on genders and that sort of thing with player characters. So one of our goals for the game, one of the pillars, is to really exaggerate the class's fantasy and to spend a lot of time and work on the characters' models and their animations and their gear and looks and these sort of things. So in our game versus like a lot of other RPGs, each class has their own gear, their own look of that gear, their own model, their own animations, all these sort of thing. And we really want to have that's really important to us to really drive that fantasy of that class. And so because of that, since they all have their own different models, adding like a different gender to each class is a pretty big expense because you'll have a different model, you have a different shape of that class, and they'll have to have different armor potentially. It's something we'd 100% want to do in the future, and if the game is successful, gives us the opportunity to add a lot of these. Um, uh, so it is something we want to do in the future. We don't have any short-term uh, anything to announce short term, but it is something we do want to do. But if we did do it, it would be very exaggerated. It'd be like a totally different, kind of model, and they'd have some custom animations and these sort of things. So it'd be really kind of quality. But so yep, it's something on our roadmap that we do want to do. It's just nothing to announce just yet.
Another question is, will you be adding other classes? Right now we have 4 classes. What's the plan there?
Yeah, so we have 6 planned right now. So we have the 4 that we have right now, which is the hunter, priest, warrior, and rogue. And then we have 2 others planned that are on our roadmap. We could link that in the chat. And so those are the wizard and the paladin. And so these are ones that we're designing right now and that are in production right now that we want to have in the game, that we would add towards, don't hold me to this, but throughout like next year and a little bit beyond. So we're really, I mean, again, if we go back to what I said our priorities are right now, it's really bug fixing, polishing, improving the current game, not really adding, new classes just yet, but it is something we are working on. Really excited actually about the wizard, I think. And this is kind of the case with all of our classes, but I think the goal here is to make the best version of this class you've ever seen in an RPG before. And I do think with this wizard, it will be that, not just in kind of the gameplay, but also, the look and aesthetics, and really excited about it. And it'll be something that we're going to do in one of the future one of these chats is we'll talk about the wizard and share some of the ideas and get your feedback and also your ideas. Really excited about that as well. So those are the 2 that we're working on short term, and then we also have a lot of ideas for other classes to do as well. Not going to announce them or talk about them today, but some of them are classic fantasy ones that you would expect in a game like this, and then we also have some others, or at least one that I feel like is unique to Notorious, that we haven't quite seen before in a game. So excited about those as well to share at some point. But yeah, so we'll do a survey at some point as well to ask like what class you're most anticipated looking forward to playing, which luckily for us with our next 2 we're working on, the wizard and the paladin, players again and again ask for those 2 classes, so we know we're on the right track. But the 7th class after that will be one that we will poll the players and see what you're most looking forward to.
Question number 4 is, will there be visual character customization?
Yeah, so kind of going back to the gender question, there is a plan to have character customization in the game. If there's anything in the game that isn't quite in just yet, that kind of bugs me is the visual character customization because it is an RPG and the player character is supposed to be your creation and your avatar. And so we do want to have a lot of rich character customization. We are a small team and we're going to release this game first as an early access, so it's something that we're going to be building and adding to the game, but it is something we're already working in internally. And so here's just like a little sharing some ideas here. So this is like the rogue's face, and he has, these are just some hair options that we have already in production and created. The one on the right is one that is going to be in the game now, the top right one, and then the hair bun one is one that we would do as a customization option. And so we'll have like hair options. We'll have actually one thing we want to do with the aesthetics, like the ethnicities and that sort of thing in the game, is really tie them to places in the world. And so we have different sections in the world that have like some sort of history and sort of like distinct culture and look to them. And when you choose your customization for your character, you choose which kingdom or region that your character comes from, and that kind of determines like how they look and aesthetically. So it's not just like, hey, you're choosing from a list of just skin tones. You're also choosing where your player originates from in the game. And so we're building a lot of that foundational work right now that we will add to the game at some point. And then I also put here the sentinel bird. This is the bird that you use, the hunter shoots as a sentinel. So one other character customization option that we're going to add to the game, and again, this won't be short term, it'll be in the future, is you'll be able to change like how your bird looks. So different colors, maybe even like you change it to an owl, these sort of things. So you can customize different parts of your different class. Another one could be, for example, the hunter. You could change out how her quiver looks, the cosmetically, and maybe the warrior one we're talking about is he has different war horns. So the war horn has a very distinct sound and that sort of thing. But what if you could have different sounds with different war horns and that you can customize? So we have a lot of actually ideas for customization for the characters that we really think add a lot of great add a lot of great different experiences for the players. So, yeah.
And the final question we have is, what is your studio's main goal with this game and what do you want it to become? Big question.
Great question. I wish this was like the one that all the investors asked me. Because it's like really about like something that we do really care about is the long-term vision of the game, the long-term the idea of what it is currently and what the vision is right now. So, the game, first of all, the game is like going to be something different to everybody because you'll take your own sort of experience and what you value out of most, whether it's playing a certain class and that fantasy, or a connection with the world and exploration, or the crafting, or playing with your friends and these sort of things. So it is going to be kind of something different for everybody, and that's awesome. What our vision for the game is supposed to be is really so. And I did do a longer blog post on my own personal blog, and we're going to do a video and talk about the vision of the game in particular. But really, the vision of the game, is that if you think about RPG PvP, there's never really been a lot of dedicated games for RPG PvP. You have like, Dota and obviously League and these games like this, but there isn't a lot of them. There's a lot of shooters right in the market, these sort of games, but I think RPG PvP is one of my biggest passions as a player, and it's kind of strange that we don't really have a lot of dedicated PvP RPG games. So, and also really games that really highlight this world PvP experience, which has been part of RPGs forever. If you think about, it originated in Ultima Online, and then you had Dayak, and then you had obviously WoW, and then there's EverQuest. There's many different games that had world PvP, but there's never been like a dedicated one for it. Which I think is weird. But then there's a lot of world PvP shooter games. If you think about even PUBG or Fortnite or Tarkov or these games like this, I would describe them as world PvP because it's not like a death match. You have to kill players. You just explore and do things in the world. and PvP can happen, but when it does, it's kind of an interesting experience and it's different every time. And so when you queue adventures in Legacy, every time I have a different experience. I'll talk with people in the studio like, "Oh, I just had a match where da 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 this happened." Cole in the chat, I think, he had an experience where he was camping and extract, but then he wasn't killing the players. He was pickpocketing them, and he got someone's plans for their lodge upgrade, and there's all these stories that come from playing each match, and so that's kind of what the goal is about. It's kind of creating these fun, interesting stories in an RPG with PvP with this open world aspect. And right now the game is very focused on Legacy, Steel, and Sorcery, which is supposed to be, this like world PvP extraction RPG, with rich crafting and really great class design and these things like this. But there's a lot of opportunities, I think, for this game long term. There's a lot of players asking for more PvE aspects, like the content and that sort of thing. And we do have plans to add more zones to the game, of course, and more different game modes and these things like this. And the PvE is really expensive content to make. I was on the World of Warcraft team, which is like hundreds of people. I think that today it's like 500 or something like that. And you spend a couple years making content, and the players just like bulldoze through that in like minutes, right? And so it's really expensive to make PvE content in a game, but it is something that we want to do more in the future. It just depends on how successful this game is going forward. But you can also look at our roadmap as well, where we talk about how we want to grow the game and like how we want to add different maps and progression. We want to have different maps that you go to and you progress and unlock, and then those could have different like bosses that you could do cooperatively. A game that I really love that's an RPG game that unfortunately doesn't have co-op or PvP is Dragon's Dogma, or if you think about Elden Ring, these games like this. And none of them allow you to play cooperatively, or like, there is PvP, but it can be kind of janky. And so there's a lot of opportunity for our game growing to really be kind of the flagship game there that has really great networking and combat and player experience, and PvE and PvP mixed together. So really, I think there's so much potential with the game going forward, of totally other different experiences we can add. So I know that's a little vague because I don't want to like hardcore set expectations on something in particular or that sort of thing, but that's kind of the space that we're talking about. We're very focused right now on this game, on the PvP VE extraction gameplay, but there's a lot of opportunity to grow it. And me and a bunch of others from the team have worked on live games and live service games and worlds for a long time, and world building, and it's a big passion of a lot of ours. And so we really would love to keep doing that. We have so many other zone ideas and system ideas we'd love to expand into in the future. We just have to make sure this core experience, this core game does well first.
Great answer. I can tell this is a real passion project for you. Yeah,
Oh, of
that
course,
was really
yeah,
good.
for a lot of us, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, that was the last question we had that we had prepped. If you guys would like to come on and ask questions yourselves, you have a button there to raise your hand.
Yo,
Thanks for your
how's it
time,
going?
guys. Cool event. Um,
Yeah.
I love the third-person camera in Legacy. I love seeing more of the world around me. I think it makes movement in combat really, really interesting. Coming from Dark and Darker, which is first-person camera, I always felt a bit restricted by the camera in that game. That said, people in my community have expressed a reservation about the third-person camera in Legacy. They say that like competitive players won't want to play a game with that style of camera. I'm not sure if that's because of the ability to see around obstacles or what that is. So it's kind of a two-part question. Can you talk about your decision to choose this camera style or this kind of foundation of player perspective? And do you envision Legacy being a competitive game at the highest level of PvP at like the esports level?
Yeah, great question. We talked a lot about this internally when we started the project. And by the way, there's no right
Mm-hmm.
camera
Mm-hmm.
for a game. It really just depends on what you want to do vision wise.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you think about first person, third person, and then isometric, which is kind of what Diablo is, there's like a spectrum of immersion that you have like it's least immersive usually when it's isometric, and it gets more immersive first person.
Mm.
And so, we immersion and is really important for us because we are trying to build this world and make you feel like your class and that sort of thing. I think some of the pros that we get with third person camera is that one, you could see your character. So you can kind of see,
Totally.
their movement and see their feet and these things like this. And you can kind of see the battlefield. So it allows you to create more interesting abilities where you can kind of observe where players are at on the map and like, cooperate with each other, that sort of thing. So you do gain that. The second one is since we are, one difference with our game versus say Dark and Darker or some of the others in the genre is that we have this open world that you can navigate. So there are things like, you could vault up things. It's kind of similar experience that you would get, say, to like something like Breath of the Wild in some cases, right? And just trying to uncover secrets and loot things behind waterfalls, these sort of things. It's a little more conducive to third person, I think, there, because you can see your player character mantling, climbing. Even first person games, sometimes what they'll do is they'll have multiple cameras and they'll create like a third person if you're going up, a mountain or something like that. So that was another reason to do third person. Or yeah, third person. Um, but ultimately, it is a preference, and so it was our preference to do third person. I think it actually, for me, I think it's a lot. Also, the type of combat system we were doing was, it was influenced a lot from multiple games and different genres. But one was sort of Souls or Elden Ring, this kind of thing with like evade and block and that sort of thing. And so because of that, that was another reason why we did third person. So I mean that's like a bunch of different kind
That's
of
great.
reasons, but I'll just say ultimately just like sort of a preference. And then your other question about do we want it to be a competitive esport game? You know, I'm not. It's not one of our pillars or goals or that sort of thing with the game.
Hmm.
It was never a goal or something we are trying to do on World of Warcraft either, but it kind of turned into that. And I played WoW Arena for many years. I've gotten Gladiator before, and it was an experience that I haven't had in another game before, and so we are going to have an arena mode, a deathmatch kind of mode in the game. It's a map that we some of you have played it perhaps before, but we've created a new dedicated map to it, and so we'll have that mode and we'll kind of see how things go. It's not, again, it's not a goal, but if the players really enjoy it and something that just sort of happens organically, that could be something we could support. But it's not something we're going to like astroturf or kind of create or say, hey, now we're going to like start having tournaments and sponsorships just out the gate. So it
Yeah.
will be, if we do have it, it will be organic, come from the community, not something we try to create ourselves, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
problem.
thank you for the
Thanks.
questions. All right, we have Kay. I can't see your name, so I'll just invite you, Mr. K. Hello.
Hello, thank you for picking me.
Of course.
I have so many questions to ask, but I know that you're short on time. So I'm gonna skip the most anticipated questions for the community. I'm just gonna ask something completely unique. As you mentioned
Okay.
earlier in your
Yes.
answer, something about day and night, and as well as Elden Ring.
Uh,
Something that I was thinking about is also with this current playtest, you were experimenting with the sun shafts around the castle. I was thinking, would you guys consider doing something like that Elden Ring does, which is adding day and night cycle into the game that changes every 15 minutes, that introduces new challenges, maybe better loot, or changes the enemies, the difficulty and stuff?
Yeah, good question. This is something again we talk a lot about internally, and um, I come from a game. Many of us come from a game that does have a day-night cycle, and that's always really immersive and cool. Certainly, one of the pillars of the game is to make the world feel like the main character, really, and so it's something we do want to play with. The light shaft was something that we added to kind of give you this sort of feel, but then there's some challenges of doing complete day-night cycle during the session, which is one thing is artistically like making the world look good. It's just a lot of work to try to make like the day night cycle look really great. And then, the other question is it just aesthetic or is there gameplay ramifications to it? And if we did it, we would want to create some gameplay difference between the different, day nights, whether it's night or day or dusk or dawn or these sort of things. And so we do have plans, and this is also in the roadmap, to add kind of a night version of the map, of Greenwood, or maybe just different weather versions. So if it's raining and these sort of things. But one thing we do want to do, if we do weather, like I mentioned, is add some like interesting gameplay to it. So certain mobs spawn during there, certain herbs are spawned, so it creates like some sort of depth, rather than just being some cosmetic version of the map. Another thing we talked about is like, oh, well, the fog level creates view distance. And so, when it's a clearer day, which kind of Greenwood is by default, you can see further out and it's a bit more conducive if you want to play a longbow on the hunter. But if it's really foggy, well, okay, maybe you switch to the swift bow or something like that because, your view distance gets reduced. So those are just some just sharing some ideas and thoughts that we had on the day night cycle. But it is something we want to experiment with. I think the next step will just be make different versions of the map, and then over time we'll see how that goes, and maybe we do a full blown, hey, it just changes throughout the map. But we also want to give the player agency as well to choose if they want to play during that version of the map. And so if you don't want to play during the night, if you don't want to play during the day or whatever, you could choose.
Thank you guys very much, and I'll
Thank
leave
you.
the stage for someone else. Thank you.
Thank you
Yeah,
very
no
much for the
problem. Thank
question.
you.
All right, one more question.
I just had a quick question. I know most of us here probably played Dark and Darker and whatnot. So my question was, do you guys have a plan on seasons and wiping? Or is all of our loot gonna stay with us, like, for the whole time we're playing?
Yeah, good question. So the plan is to have a seasonal model, so it will have a reset of the economy. Uh, so this does, we like this model for a bunch of different reasons. Same reasons as like Diablo has it. It gives new players a chance to have an equal footing. So, and then it allows us to not let the economy and a bunch of things stagnate. That said, we do want to have some sort of things with the game do carry on between seasons. One idea here is obviously for like cosmetics or other perks or not perks, don't want to use that term, but there'll be some things that you will be able to carry over between seasons, like accolades and these things like this. That said, we do want to play with this. This is like idea we had internally. Don't know if we're going to do this 100%. Just a fun idea. So in the lodge, right, you can unlock a bunch of different modules. You can unlock the stash container that increases how much stash size you have, that sort of thing. We had this fun idea of maybe you can unlock a vault, and the vault will allow you to put so much items in this container that would carry over to the next season. So you can kind of choose like, hey, do I want this armor? Do I want this weapon? Do I want a bunch of herbs? Do I want a certain treasure that you could sell for a glints to the goblin to start the next season with? So, but it would be very contained. It would be a certain amount of items. But yeah, so to answer your question, the plan is to have a seasonal model. We don't know how often we would reset. It could be 3 months, could be 6. Don't know just yet. We really kind of have to see how things go in the subsequent playtests and even when we go live.
Cool. Thank you very much for answering, and I love the idea of the vault. That's awesome.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Looks like we have one more.
Nice to talk to you guys. So I just had a quick question. I was wondering about like if there would be sort of like elite mobs or something, would there be a chance of getting maybe, like a special item just for that map, or having a special buff? That's just a sort of question I had for you guys.
Yeah, that's a good question. Right now, the elites in the map, like the ogre or the animated armor or the red skeleton guy, I think also the mage, the skeletal mage, they do drop a certain item, monstrous rune, I think it's called right now, and that is used to craft some upgrades of the lodge stash storage space. So that will add like increase stash tabs to your to your stash. So that is one unique item they drop. They drop some other unique items, and we're going to add a lot more items and a lot more reasons to kill and target these certain creatures in the game. Another one, like for example, the ogre drops ogre fat, which is used for some various crafting materials and stuff like that. So yeah, really adding and adding color and blossoming kind of really the loot tables of the different elites and some of the other creatures in the map is totally a goal that we're going to do. And always interested in your guys' ideas as well of like some cool items that we could throw on them and that sort of thing. So always curious your guys' ideas too.
That's great to hear. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
Thank you for the question. We were thinking about, we were talking at least about having some items that don't get to leave the map. So there'll be kind of like very strong items that you might be able to just use on the like within the session that you get them in. So maybe that's something we could hook up to the elites eventually if that materializes. Because I think he was talking about unique weapons that you can't get out of the session. That's what I got from his question. Maybe.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. So there is this category of item that we played with a little bit right now, which is you could loot an item and that'd be really powerful, but if you extract, you don't get to keep it. So you really have to use it in that session. Like I think the only item we have right now is this invulnerability potion. So if you don't use it, you're gonna lose it, kind of thing. And so we can add like a little bit more powerful items or just play around with different things that we normally couldn't really do. And so we're going to add some more of those and play with that a little bit more in the future for sure. So yeah, interesting idea.
All right, let's do the last question.
All right.
Mr. K, welcome back.
One final question is something that I think it was asked before, and I was one of those people who asked it. Would you guys consider, or have you guys thought of it, how would you allow certain unlockables, customizations, titles and stuff to be unlocked for the player or for its class? Would that involve challenges for its class? For example, killing a boss like with a certain weapon, or doing this many jumps, or doing something unique with each class that would unlock something for that class specifically that will differ you from someone else who doesn't have it? Or would that only involve like, you know, microtransactions?
No, I think that's something we could definitely add as a system to the game. We have like this idea of these so we have quests in the game, right? We have this idea called the quest board, and it's just like little tasks that you do, and just really the goal of that is to give you some idea, some little micro goal to do during adventures. But we plan on having more robust quest systems, like quest lines to do. And when we have this idea for quest lines for different classes, so like challenges for the class like you're talking about, so it asks you to do things like, execute so many players as a rogue, pickpocket so many items, stealth through and loot, this many chests or whatever. It would give you some reward that is unique or specific for that quest line reward. And so that would be like one example, right? So I love that idea of creating more unique things that the player can unlock from doing different challenges. It's definitely something we want to add to the game that's on the roadmap. So yeah, love that idea.
I don't blame people who would want to financially support you guys. I would also do it because I can see the potential of your game and how much love you're putting into it. I'm pretty sure that the whole community can see the love that you put into your game. But it would also give some sort of self-accomplishment if someone would achieve something unique, whether it would be killing a very tough boss or doing something special on a specific date because you will release an event that won't come back again, something like that.
I think there's room for you guys to support. I really appreciate that, by the way. We do put a lot of work and love into the game, and really want it to succeed and think we have something special, so I really appreciate that. But we'll have ways for you to support us, and then ways to earn things that from merit, or things that show your skill or expression there as well. So we can accomplish both things. So anyway, really appreciate it.
Thank you for your question, and thank you for your questions, everybody. I think that was the last one for today. If you guys enjoyed the format, we'll be doing it again on Tuesday. So prepare more questions for then. We're gonna probably talk about the upcoming playtest that's going to happen the day after. We might reveal some new abilities, some new stuff that's going to make it into the build. Thank you everyone for joining today. And yeah, Chris, any closing statements?
I just want to say thank you everyone for all your support and really appreciate all your questions. And, ultimately we really make this game for you. And so, yeah, thanks for all your support and see you in the next playtest starting next week, December 4th. All right.
How does
Bye-bye.
this work? Do we just close it now? Bye.
Yeah, there'll be, yeah. I'll show you in a bit. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye everyone.